I'd like to introduce our visitor from Educational Management Solutions. This is Sherry Boyd. Sherry has over 10 years of experience in higher education, serving as a controller and HR director, as well as additional years of experience working with the public school system. Thank you. Thank you. Her experience includes performance management systems improvements as well as employee relations. Ms. Boyd received an MBA and earned her BS and a master's in industrial and organizational psychology from Kansas State University. Ms. Boyd works out of her Southern California office in Victorville, which is hot and full of Joshua trees. So welcome to beautiful Napa.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, I definitely appreciated the rolling green hills this morning as I drove in. Not what I'm used to looking at that barren desert wasteland, but I like to thank all of you for being here this morning to learn more about the classification and compensation study, which is taking place here at Napa Valley College. It speaks a lot for your HR department that they are interested in making sure that everything is aligned properly and to take care of you employees, because without good, willing, hardworking, dedicated employees, the students are the ones that suffer. So congratulations to the HR department for making this possible. So yay, thank you, HR. Just to kind of give a little bit more background on myself from what Sharo had said. I started with EMS as an analyst, and analysts are those people that you will, if you're in a focus group, that you will be meeting this week. They are the ones who come out and actually speak with the small groups and talk to the employees. And that was how I started. And then I was offered a position as a coordinator, I think probably because of that IO psychology and the ability to do some of those statistical things as well. So without any further ado, we will get started talking about what we're here today to talk about, the classification study. Some of the objectives that we have for this morning are that we're going to kind of talk about what makes a successful study and what will help keep the project on track and how it's going to benefit you. We're going to talk in depth about the phases of the study, about job analysis and how that works, what the process is, and the outcomes. Job descriptions will be the outcome. And we're going to talk a little bit about functions versus tasks. And then we will have a time at the end for questions. So I will go through all of the information, and then if you could just hold your questions to the end, that would be great. So when we talk about the criteria for success, one of the things that is most important is effective planning. And that has been taking place for several months now. We've worked with the HR department. Annie's done an awesome job of communicating with us. And you know, some of that process was finding the times, the rooms, the incumbents to represent all of the individuals, getting a stakeholders committee together, and finding all of those interested parties and making sure that everyone is going to be an active part of the study. Part of the communication process includes not only meetings like this, but the focus groups, stakeholder committees, and then ongoing conversations that we'll have with the HR department. One of the things that we find works best is if we just have the one point of contact here at the college and then one point of contact with the company, so that everything will go through the HR department. If you have any questions, you'll be able to, ask somebody who is either in a focus group, a stakeholder. Always go to HR because they will be able to assist you as well. And any concerns or questions that you have about EMS or the process will be forwarded to us so that we can respond. We always use a uniform approach in working through the study, and we find that helps so that everyone kind of experiences is the same. So with each of our analysts, they each have a little bit of their own personal touch, but overall, they will be following the same process for every focus group. And all of the processes that we do complete, there are a variety of reasons that we do them, and we'll talk about those in depth a little bit. And also how that affects some of the future actions of the university, or of the college. So I talked a little bit about the stakeholder committee. And this is a group of individuals, I believe there are 8, and they have been chosen as representatives of different classifications who are being included within the study. I believe that there's some members of HR, obviously, as well as some departmental and some individuals who might be involved with some of the bargaining units. And their main goal is to kind of be that liaison with the campus, to represent you to us, and for us to be represented through them to you. And so if you ever have any questions, they will be kept up to date on what the process is, where we're at as far as progress throughout the study. We'll be meeting today. After this meeting, we have our first stakeholders committee meeting, where they will be given some in-depth information about the progress of the study, what some of the steps are, and some of the expectations. And then we will come back again later for a second committee meeting to kind of get them up to date on progress, and then a third one just before we give the final recommendation. So usually there'll be 3 meetings with the stakeholders and our company. So let's kind of talk about what a classification study is. We have 3 main pieces to our classification study. The job analysis, which is phase 1, is by far the lengthiest, and it's the one where we will be most apparent to you, because this is the time when we're on campus. This is when we're conducting focus groups. We'll be doing validation of the data that we've received, and those are all on-campus activities. So you'll see us more then, and there's a lot going on during that phase. After we get through compiling all of that data, we will come back and give some information. Sort of how the process goes is we'll be here for the focus groups, take that data back. Our analysts will compile it and get some good idea of what it is that you do in your jobs. We will come back with some functions of your job for supervisors to look at. So you can say whatever you want, but your boss is going to look at it and be able to say, yes, this really is what they do, or no, I don't know where they kind of got that idea. We'll make some revisions there, and then after that, this is the exciting part. This is when you all get to look at a draft job description. So at that point, it's so important that when you get that notification from HR, that you look at it, that you review it, you make changes and return it, because that is how you will be heard. Even if you're not involved in the focus groups, if you're not in a stakeholder committee, you will have that opportunity to have your voice heard. So I encourage you, when you get that draft job description, to please look at it, mark it up, and return it so that you know that your information is being included. Because that is the basis for all of the rest of the study. We need to know what it is that you do. We need to know what knowledge, skills, and abilities it takes you to do it, so that when we go out and start looking at comparative market, we know that we're comparing a like job, because job titles don't mean everything. What one person does as an administrative assistant here might be very different from what an administrative assistant does here. There might be different levels. And so by knowing exactly what knowledge, skills, abilities, what functions you do, we're able to then go out and compare actual like jobs for a better comparison. It's also utilized when we do internal equity. We look not only at what you do and what your compensation is compared to the market, we also look at it first as to how it compares with others within the organization. So that if you are working at this level and being paid at this level, we want to make sure that everyone else at this level is getting paid at this level. But if you're working up here and getting paid down here, something's out of whack. And through this process, we will be able to identify some of those areas. So having good data is the most important piece. Now, I say all of that. I've got us through phase 1 and 2. Then we get down to step 3, which is the development and the implementation. We are consultants, and we will make recommendations. There will be some recommendations that have no cost effect at all. Change some job titles so that they're more standard. Doesn't cost anything except for, maybe recreating some paper. There might be other recommendations that do cost money. Hey, these people are not being paid enough, and you should raise their salary structure. That's not something we're going to decide. We can make recommendations. It's always going to be up to the college to determine that. I might also note that there might be that case where we go, this person is getting paid more than the market. We will never, ever, ever recommend that someone lose any pay as a result of this study. It might be Y-rated, grandfathered, however you refer to that, but no one will be harmed financially by the study. So, talking about the data collection and analysis, since it is the largest piece of the study, what is it that we do? Well, we will first look at your existing documentation, also known as your current job descriptions for starters. So has everyone here looked at their job descriptions recently? So you've looked at it, hey, this is exactly what I do, or hey, wow, this doesn't even look like what I do. And how many of you are involved in focus groups? A lot of you are in focus groups. Good. So then you will be able to, when you come to your focus group, if you have a copy of your current job description that you've marked up, that will be very helpful because that's one of the first things that the analyst is going to ask you. Have you looked at your current job description and is it correct? And then we'll go through a series of questions about that. So that takes us down to focus groups as the second way of getting information by talking to the people who are actually in the job, subject matter experts. And who is a better expert at your job than you? No one. So then we will look at all of that job information, and like I said, we'll come back and we'll validate that information with supervisors. It will then go on to employees as well as that draft job description, and then everyone will get a chance to provide some feedback. Typically, you'll get a draft job description, we'll make some changes, and send them back out again. So that then you can look at it and go, oh yeah, this looks more like what I do. So hopefully at that point, it will all be good. Usually we're about 70% after the initial focus groups and supervisor validation process. So if you look at it and you go, wow, this is completely off, there might be another one that goes, yes, this is completely on. So feel free to, make those changes when you get that opportunity. So focus groups. Has anyone ever participated in a focus group before? And was it a good experience, bad experience? Just an experience? Well, hopefully this will be a really good experience. I think they're a lot of fun. And one of the reasons why we use focus groups as opposed to other types of techniques for getting this information, you can do one-on-one interviews, and that's valid information. You can just hand out a survey. You get a survey, and what do? You kind of go, oh, well, maybe. So we don't find that information is that great because, when you've got a blank slate, it's hard to put it all down. part of the focus groups is interactive, and we like to get people together who have similar positions or who might be in the same department together, because you kind of feed off of each other. And I find that, those people who are, really new to their jobs, they don't really know. I mean, unless you've been in your job a year, you really don't know what happens throughout that whole time frame, because it changes. It's kind of cyclic with schools. Or you've got that person who's been in their position 20 years, and they just do it, and they don't even remember all of those little things that they do. So when you get together in a focus group, sometimes, an analyst will ask a question, and, Mary will go, oh, yeah, I do that. And then Judy will be over there and go, but wait, no, you also do this. So we find that it kind of brings out even more information by having a number of people within the group. So, one of the things that they'll talk about is, what is it that you do? And so we will try to get a feel for, how the process works here, because although we have experience within school districts, our company's been around for about 20 years, working specifically with schools, school districts, county office of eds, community colleges. There's always a few differences. It depends on the school, it depends on the culture, it depends on, the number of students, the number of staff. We had a school, one place that the superintendent was also the bus driver, just because it worked out that way. He was available at that time. So, typically superintendents don't drive buses. So, that was just a little nuance for there. So although we do have the basics of, how the structure of schools work and what the functions of particular jobs are, there are always some differences, and those are the things that we're always really interested in finding out and figuring out how it works for you. Then, of course, we also need to know what it takes for you to do the job, what KSAOs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other things. Other things would be some specifics. If you're in financial aid, you have to know a little bit more about some different, title programs than you might if you were working in the HR office, where you would have to have some specific knowledge about legislation and EEOC issues. So those are some of the things that will be discussed within the focus groups. Looking at job requirements. What does it take for you to do the job? We look at complexity of the job, responsibility, and working conditions, knowledge, and skills. And when we're looking at complexity and responsibility, some of the things that we look at are data, people, and equipment. So when you're thinking about complexity of your job, some of the areas that we look at are coordination. How much coordination do you have with people? Do you just do your job in a little silo, or do you have to coordinate and make sure that person A and person B are available at the same time so that they can make sure that equipment C has been moved properly? Those are all part of the focus group questions that will come up. So, things like diversity of people. Do you only deal with preschool children all day, or do you also have to deal with board members and faculty members and students, parents? So those are just some of the areas that are affected when we're looking at people, data, and equipment. And so those things, if you have a maintenance person, they're probably going to be dealing more with equipment than, say, someone in HR. Although HR, they kind of do everything. So one of the things that EMS does as part of our job descriptions is we actually started out with our process because of ADA compliance. And it was all based on some of the EEOC regulations about essential job functions and marginal job functions, and why these jobs are essential. So We do all of our job descriptions with function statements. So right here is a typical description for a police officer. Drives a patrol car and writes reports. Now, I think we can all agree that that really isn't very descriptive and probably not really accurate, because I see police officers that aren't just in patrol cars. They're on horseback, they're on bicycles, they're walking. And reports, what kind of reports do they write? So when we look at how we write our job descriptions, we have it in a much more descriptive way, and also more encompassing. So as you can see, if there was a case of someone who might be returning to work early after being out on a workers' comp claim, or for some other reason, it has more options there. So, and also is much more descriptive. So, responds to calls for the purpose of evaluating situations and taking appropriate action to protect the public is really a lot more descriptive of what a police officer does than drives a patrol car, because they might be responding on foot, in a car. It opens that up to those different areas, and then prepares various documentation of actions and we have the purpose there, for administrative requirements, for legal follow-up. It gives validity to the reasons why that police officer is writing those reports. He's not just writing speeding tickets to make our lives miserable. So part of the validation process is with both employees and supervisors. We call this supervisor validation, and this is when we have a bunch of function statements that will be listed out on a sheet that supervisors will come in and review. Now, all of these function statements have been based upon the information that was attained during the focus groups, through the review of the current job descriptions, and in speaking with the employees. We look at that as far as the job requirements for the job, as well as the compliance standards, things that are going to be acceptable for EEOC, areas that might be governed by accreditation for ed codes, all of those things. We'll look at FLSA, make sure that the exempt versus non-exempt is being adhered to properly. Internal equity, this is the part where I was kind of talking about how we will look and compare those functions of all of the different jobs. We have a point factor analysis system that we use, and so that every job classification is given a point factor. And it's all been validated so that based on reliability of other school districts, so that we can then compare and make sure that the compensation and those internal equity values are similar and are the same throughout the organization, to make sure that everyone is being compensated fairly based upon other classifications within the school. And then we will also look at those in families and subfamilies. So typically you'll have your administrative support, you might have your financial support, technology, some of those different areas, and then like management would be looked at separately, so that it's not only within the whole organization, but even just within those different families and subfamilies. Sources, this is something that we'll be talking about today in the stakeholder meeting, is the competitive market. When we're looking at comparing your salary data to those of outside sources, we try to look at different markets that are in the same geographical area, because it's really not going to do a lot of good to compare Napa Valley with something in North Dakota, because you probably make a little bit more here. I don't know why. Size, we'll find some comparable schools in terms of enrollment and employee numbers. The types of schools. We will be looking at other community colleges. We probably won't be comparing you with a county office of ed, even if it's in the same geographical area, because it's going to be different types of jobs, and it's going to be a dissimilar type of an organization. And then here's the one that I really like, is your competition. Who is it that you are taking employees from, or who is it that you're losing employees to? Because those are your biggest competitors. And those are the ones that we really want to make sure that we compare salary structures to and compensation amounts, because that is probably the one that affects you the most. When we look at those external markets, we are looking at benchmark positions, and it's typically about 35% of the study classifications. So we will not compare the salaries of every job that's in the study. We look at benchmarks. We look at them within the families and subfamilies. We typically will try to do a low end, a high end, so that we get the whole structure across the salary ranges. That way we can kind of benchmark and determine that, yes, at the lowest level you're good, at the highest level, you know, you might be under, but we get a good feel for that, and then we can kind of extrapolate to everything in between, that within that subfamily it's all looking good and the way it should. And then if there are any specific areas that you are looking at, we will definitely include those as part of our benchmarks. If, say, you have a new job that's being created, or if there's a job that you really have felt has been, you know, underpaid or overpaid, we will definitely include that in the study. So if you have any of those kinds of information that you would like to share, find somebody who's in the stakeholders committee, and I know that Sharo and Annie are both going to be included. So you might want to mention that to them unless they already are aware of it. So just kind of going back through, what we're doing is the basis of the whole project is going to be to update your job descriptions. Make sure that those functions are accurate, and because based upon that information, there are so many other factors that come into play. If you want to recruit someone, you need to have a good idea of what that job entails, what knowledge, skills, and abilities you're looking for in the individual to fill that position. Also, for any kind of placement, for, you know, any kind of a position change, collective bargaining, the unions always want to make sure that these things are lined up properly and in compliance. If there's ever, you know, like I mentioned, somebody who's out on a medical leave and wants to return to work early, having good factual information can help, and if any needed accommodations, and making sure that they'll be able to do that. Performance. How can you evaluate someone's performance if you don't really know what it is that they do or at what level they're supposed to be doing it? So, you know, having that good base solid knowledge in the job descriptions is what makes all of the other pieces fall into place, and kind of is that building block from which you can start. So, this is the part where you get to ask questions. Yes?
Go back to your source. My understanding, contracting was a comp study brought up. Sources, like what schools, was already fixed. Is that changing? Does that change the...
No, if those were included, I could not find the RFP to see if that was included. Were there sources?
First, I want to say thank you so much for a well thought out presentation. Thank you. I want to give credit where credit is due, and I want to make sure everyone understands who was involved in the process to get EMS here. So, through negotiations, the classified union and HR worked together, and this is why we are here. It's as a result of negotiations. So, I know at the beginning, credit was given to Office of Human Resources. It's not entirely Office of Human Resources. This is as a result of a negotiation. We have been working very closely with SEIU as well as with the Administrative Confidential Senate. So just want to give credit where credit is due. Yes, through negotiations, there were identified sources. Those sources will not change. If additional information is to be offered in addition to those sources, it will be shared with all of the groups that are part of the stakeholders groups, and a decision will be made whether or not each group would like to consider the additional information, but that has not changed. Maybe I should mention who's in the stakeholders group. Yeah. The stakeholders group will be meeting later today, and that group is comprised of Jan Shart, Nathan Hansford, who is the field rep for SEIU, Destiny Eklund, Ken Arnold, Patty Morgan, Robin Warnall, myself, and Annie Chenavong. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
What is the timeline for the completion of the process?
Typically, I do not have the structure with me. It's tied up over there right now. Typically, it takes 6 to 9 months for a study from start to finish. It always kind of depends on any roadblocks we come up along the way. And we always try to plan around things like Christmas break. But I believe that we are supposed to be finished up by March. Yes, in the back.
Will the stakeholders have an opportunity to review and influence EMS's recommendations?
Not so much.
The recommendation process grows out of the dialogue and then.
Yes, the stakeholder committee is more focused on being that liaison, that communication tool between EMS and the incumbents and the school. Yes.
So physical requirements will come out of this for HR
Yes, those are part of the working conditions, and included in working conditions are things like outdoor temperature, lifting, crawling. One of the things that you'll see on those draft job descriptions will be the percentage of time sitting, standing, and walking. So yes, those will all be addressed. And those all have their own little point factors. We have a 33 to 34 point factor that goes in. There's 33 points plus that extra one is the working conditions. Anyone else? Yes.
Now, when you guys are assessing the job descriptions, do you consult active workers who do similar jobs like in the real world to compare what skills are being brought to the college?
We will only do that if that is requested as part of the study. We will look at school districts. We'll look at community colleges for comparison unless there is some need for any specific classifications that might need to have something from outside, but that would have to come at the recommendation of the college. Anybody? Yes.
So when we're talking about the factoring of the position itself and the calculation of proper compensation for the work that is being performed, Are we understanding that it's going to be strictly isolated to the peer institutions that are going to be a part of this study? Because I thought you had mentioned that part of what you're going to be looking at is the environment in which we live. So as an example, if your classification and your job that you perform has an equivalent that is across many different industries, so there is a certain type of analyst that works in many different industries, all represented in this area, is the compensation for that position in those industries?
No, we will be looking specifically at the sources that are included in the study.
Strictly.
Strictly, yes. But when I talk about local, it's, you know, we'll be looking at probably like Shasta College, but we won't be looking at, you know, New York University. We will be looking at those things that are here local and comparable.
Is the list of sources available?
I'm sure that it is. I will find them because I was looking for them because a lot of times they're included in the initial RFP, and I just haven't been given access to that yet. So I don't know, Annie, or do you have those list of sources? Okay. Yes.
But it sounds like, at least based on the presentation, that in addition to the set of institutions that was negotiated by the classified staff, and that would be the initial list of sources, let's say that if Solano isn't on that list, but we're either receiving employees from there or losing employees to there, then that list would be supplemented with Solano. Is that correct?
That would be something that would need to be discussed and agreed upon, yes. But that's not a decision that EMS is going to make. That's going to be in conjunction with the college and at their recommendation.
Will we know what groups we're being compared to ahead of time, or is that a secret all the way to the end? Or
Oh, no, and it's no secret now. It's just that I don't have the information. Well, hopefully after this meeting, I'll be able to get that. And so that will be available out through HR on the website, possibly. All right. Anybody have any other questions? All right. If not, I'd like to thank you for coming and finding out more about the study, and I hope that you have a clearer understanding now. And if you do ever have any questions, make sure that you contact HR, contact one of the stakeholders. And for those of you who are going to be in the focus groups, it's going to be fun. You're going to like it. And thank you so much.